Welcome to Better Than Ever Live, coming to you live from Champion Studio in Charleston, South Carolina. Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, I hope you're making today your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. I help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injuries, or medical conditions. So happy to be here with you today. We have a ton of really interesting, really helpful topics to get to. I'm really excited to talk about some of them, share them with you. Hopefully you can make some changes that improve your life. Remember, this is not medical advice. I'm not your doctor. You're not my patient. I'm not giving you specific medical advice. This is meant for information and educational purposes only. Also, I'd love to hear your comments if you're watching this live on YouTube, on Facebook, or LinkedIn. Leave your comments. Preferably put your first name and where you are so I can know who we're talking to, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you're listening to the podcast version, obviously you can't leave your comments, but consider subscribing to the live show. Really excited to get to talk to you today as we head into the month of October coming up. Really, tomorrow actually. Really excited. Love fall. It's a great time of year. All right, let's start with the bad stuff. I think I'm going to do we're going to work to good stuff today, but we're probably going to start a little negative, and we're going to talk about our kids. Now, children are not the negative. That's not what I'm saying. But let's talk about children and their development. I mean, we're talking little, like babies, infants, toddlers, and on up. They need proper vitamins and minerals and all the nutrients so that their bodies develop normally. Their bones are healthy, muscles, cartilage, their eyes, their heart, their blood vessels, their brains all need proper nutrition with the vitamins and minerals to support that growth and so that they develop normally. Well, just ask yourself for a second, if you had to guess how good the average child's diet in this country is, where would you rank that? How would that go? I mean, just ask yourself if you're a parent out there, what do you feed your kids? Do you feed them, meats and green vegetables and healthy foods, or things that come out of a bag or out of a box? All right. Well, a new study, this is just frightening, out of the University of North Carolina. Cool place. That's where my brother is actually. He teaches at the University of North Carolina. The researchers there published an article last month in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It was a 20-year study that ended in 2018. In 2018, and this is probably true today, if not more so, 2018, 67% of kids' diets came from ultra-processed foods. 2/3 of everything they put in their mouths was what we call ultra-processed foods. And if you aren't sure what that means, what an ultra-processed food is, I like to say it's anything that comes in a bag or anything that comes in a box, things largely in the middle of a grocery store, but it's things with added salt, added preservatives, other additives. There's a new definition. An ultra-processed food, any food that includes food substances not commonly used in culinary preparations. Yikes, that sounds appetizing, doesn't it? Here's just some examples from the authors of this study. Mass-produced breads and cereals, cookies, pastries, ice cream, carbonated drinks, prepackaged, pre-prepared meats, instant soups, and that just is the beginning of them. Again, I say anything in a box, anything in a bag, it's largely in the middle of the store. I know there's some exceptions to that, but generally that's true. So 67% of kids' diets comes from these ultra-processed foods with all the additives and all the salt and preservatives. Only 23% comes from what we call whole or unprocessed foods. Again, these are the dinners with meats and green vegetables or produce like fruits and vegetables that don't come in cans, things like that. Only 23%. So you have to ask yourself, as these kids are growing, their brains are developing, their hearts are developing, their muscles and the bones are developing, are they getting enough vitamins? Are they getting enough minerals, especially the vitamin D, especially the iron that really helps kids develop? Probably not. And this is important because in the young ages, that's where a lot of their later health comes from. I mean, if you don't get the right vitamins and minerals, eat the right foods at a young age, your gut bacteria changes and may be more likely to have disease issues, problems with your immune system. There's all sorts of issues related to poor nutrition at a young age. So what do we do about it? Do we just say, all right, so what? There's not much I can do about it. My kids love buttered noodles, or my kids love Chick-fil-A or Wendy's or wherever, and it's so easy to stop there after work. I get it. First of all, my first suggestion would be, parents, this is largely on us. And it's not so much forcing them to eat healthy. We have to eat healthy. We can't say, hey, go outside and play and get some exercise and then come in and we're going to eat your green vegetables when you go sit in front of the couch watching TV and chowing down on a bag of chips. It sends the wrong message. You have to model healthy eating behaviors. But another thing is, just don't have these foods in your home. The pretzels, the potato chips, the ice cream. Willpower starts at the store, not at home. Once it's in your home, somebody's going to eat it. If not your kids, you're going to eat it. So just don't buy it. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, this is probably a few months ago, who is a nutritionist, dietitian, and she was saying that what she advises families to do to teach proper eating, healthy eating for kids, take them to the grocery store with you. Now, most kids, probably your kids if you try it, are going to see, hey mom, Skittles, let me get some, or Goldfish or Cheez-Its or all sorts of junk. I don't even call them junk food, it's just junk. But having said that, it gives you the opportunity to go around the perimeter of the store where the fruits and the vegetables and the meats are, and you can talk about healthy food choices, let them pick, give them some ownership in it, but you're teaching them healthy behaviors all along the way, and by letting them choose, it makes them sort of a partner in it, so they have an interest in it. So that may be something you try. That was a dietitian friend of mine that gave me that tip, and I actually really like that. All right. On another sort of negative front as it pertains to eating and food, maybe you are going through a tough time. Maybe it's a tough time at school, or a problem at work, or a breakup, or a nasty divorce, and you're sitting in a room with attorneys in a mediation yelling at people all day long, whatever it is, and you respond by eating a bunch of junk food. Okay? That's what we call emotional eating, and adults do it and kids do it. Not everybody, some people. And it's linked to all kinds of issues, just eating junk foods, eating unhealthy foods, eating lots of foods as a response to emotional stress. Well, researchers at the University of Oregon wanted to look at that specifically with younger kids, children and adolescents, to see which of them were most likely to develop emotional eating patterns. And again, if it's in response to school stress or sports stress or peer pressure or whatever. And they wanted to see if a parent's actions led to it. So they identified a number of different actions, and I'm not going to get into the mechanics of how this story worked or how this study worked, but they found that parents, especially mothers who practiced what they called restrictive eating, basically limiting the child's intake of food, that became associated with that child's later developing emotional eating habits. And they weren't really clear on exactly what restrictive eating was, or at least I didn't pick up on exactly what that meant. Is that punishing a kid, hey, go to your room, no dinner for you, is that restrictive eating? Or is it, maybe you shouldn't eat so much, sort of pressure to lose weight or something like that, so you limit how much they eat? I'm not 100% sure. But parents, be really, really careful about restrictive feeding, restrictive food intake as it pertains to your kids, because you don't want your kids to respond to any kind of adversity by eating, chocolates and potato chips and things like that. All right, let's balance out bad eating with a little bit of exercise. We talked, a couple shows ago about the benefits of walking and getting around, moving, and just not being sedentary. All good and fine. But there's a difference between sort of moderate, mild exercise where you're going, but you're not pushing yourself that hard, and going pretty hard for a shorter period of time. There was a new study in the journal PLOS ONE, And the authors compared 45 minutes of jogging. So that's a pretty decent workout. 45 minutes steady state cardio, jogging, compared it to a 10-minute workout involving 1 minute of high intensity sprinting. Now, I do wonder, before I get to what that actually showed, if this, I don't know if you've read the book, the 1 minute workout, Martin Chabala, I forget how he says his last name. Fascinating book, but it's all based around the premise of high intensity interval training. And he shows this study looking at a 10-minute workout that is in the midst of the 10 minutes, there's 3 20-second all-out sprints. And I don't mean just sort of go faster on a bike. I mean all out. And I've done it several times. If you do it in a gym and your bike is going to make so much noise it sounds like you're taking off, everybody starts staring at you. I mean, it really is obnoxious, but it burns. It is something else. And you think, 20 seconds, what can you do? Yeah, do that the first time and see how that goes. It's like, I forget the mechanics. It's like 2-minute warm up, 20-second sprint, then like another 2-minute cool down, 20-second sprint, and 3 just all out, pedal to the metal. Just like, you cannot move your legs any faster. Do that and see how that goes. Anyway, so I don't know if that was the 10-minute high intensity workout in this study, but regardless, 45 minutes of jogging compared to a 10-minute workout with a single minute of high intensity sprinting. After 12 weeks of that, people in both groups showed the same improvement in cardiovascular health and metabolic health. So they were both good, but you can do it in a whole less time. So let's talk about short workouts. Let's talk about 15 minutes. Can you really accomplish a lot in 15 minutes? Well, there's the short answer to that is yes, you can. There's a study in neuropsychology. I guess I don't know if I said that right. Anyway, if you ride a stationary bike for 15 minutes, you get a 14% increase in your cognitive performance. So students out there, instead of cramming for a test right before you take it, maybe get on a stationary bike for 15 minutes. Or if you're about to give a big speech or something, instead of rehearsing your speech one more time, maybe you get on a stationary bike. All right. Another one is that 15 minutes exercise can curb your appetite cravings. This is a really interesting study in the journal Appetite. They found chocolate lovers, people that just love chocolate. Took all of them, held them away from chocolate for 2 days. They couldn't eat any chocolate. Then they broke them into 2 groups. Each group had to do a series of stressful skill tasks. And in front of them on the tables while they were doing these tasks were a bowl of chocolate treats, both groups. But one group had to do 15 minutes of brisk walking before doing the tasks. What do you think happened in terms of how many chocolate treats they ate? The group that did the walking ate half as much of the chocolate as the group that didn't walk before the stressful task. So somehow it has an effect on your cravings for bad foods. And I know we've talked about a little bit on here the licensing effect. Basically, hey, I've exercised today, I did all this good, so now I get to eat something bad. I get to basically make up for it. This suggests that exercise actually may prevent you from doing that, which I would argue is certainly good news. All right. Better mental health from 15 minutes of exercise. A study in JAMA Psychiatry, Journal of the American Medical Association Psychiatry, study out of Harvard. 15-minute daily run or 15 minutes of equivalent moderate intensity exercise reduced risk of depression by 26%. And then coming full circle with something I talked about a couple shows ago, 15 minutes of exercise can help you live longer. Study in the Lancet, 400,000 people in this study, compared to people in the study who didn't exercise at all. Those that did 90 minutes of exercise a week, which is roughly 15 minutes of exercise a day, 14% lower risk of mortality from all causes, 3-year increase in life expectancy. So 15 minutes is all you need to do. It isn't that hard, and you've got 15 minutes in your day that you can do some kind of exercise. Get some equipment at home so that you can do exercise, so you can't use the excuse of, well, I don't have time to drive to the gym. Fine. Get something in your house, climb stairs for 15 minutes or go outside and jog, and come back, make your loop a 15-minute loop, but something, physical activity for 15 minutes can do you a world of good. Like we said a few shows ago, walking's great. You see, I just started, you're seeing me drink water if you're watching this live. I've just gotten back on my drinking a gallon of water a day. So that's my gallon jug. I still have a little ways to go by the end of the day. So it could be a fun night for me making trips to the bathroom, but I actually do feel better on the gallon of water. So if you're looking at that and going, what in the world is that? That's why I've got a water bottle that big. Walking's great. We've talked about the benefits of walking and not being sedentary. I'm not big on it necessarily as a form of exercise. I'm not talking about the walking like my mom does, that is 8 to 16 miles a day, all out speed. Like when I call her and she just happens to be walking and she does the call through her headset or whatever she's listening to, her AirPods or whatever, like you can barely talk to her because she's breathing so hard because she's moving so fast. That's not what I'm talking about. Most people, when they're walking, they're just strolling. It's great. You can get outside, fresh air, get some sunlight and vitamin D, all for it. But that's good for your health, may not be super good for your fitness. And I'm not even going to need to get to the how they did this study. A new study in the European Heart Journal, 2,000 people in the Framingham study, basically what they found is that moderate to vigorous physical exercise 3 times better in terms of boosting your fitness than walking. Kind of gets back to that 1-minute workout. Shorter sometimes can be better. The harder you work, you don't need to do it as long. So just keep that in mind. I'm all for walking, but try to push yourself a little bit, even for short periods of time. Plus, exercise can make you happy. A new study, fittingly, in the Journal of Happiness study, came out of the University of Kent, University of Reading in Great Britain. What they wanted to know is, there's always been this link between exercise and happiness. But is it that exercise causes happiness, or are people that are happier more likely to exercise? And I don't know, I'm not a statistician, so I don't know exactly what the instrumental variable approach is, but somehow they prove that exercise increases life satisfaction. Exercise increases happiness. Now, something else in the study did it as well, and that was eating fruits and vegetables. Those two things seem to increase life satisfaction and increase happiness. But it worked that way, not the other way around. Basically, being physically active and eating well makes you happy rather than you're happy so you live a healthier lifestyle. So again, all for exercise. We've talked about cravings, we've talked about mental health, we've talked about happiness, cognitive performance, all good reasons to get exercise. All right, a few more about nutrition, and then I got one that I want to close on that I think is kind of funny. All right, nuts. I grew up thinking, I always heard nuts were healthy. We're talking almonds, cashews, walnuts, maybe in theory peanuts, that you don't want to do that because if you eat, basically they cause you to gain weight. And there's a new study in the journal Obesity Reviews that questions that. And so they pooled 121 clinical trials. There were over 500,000 people in this study when they put everybody together. Basically, nuts and bolts of it, so to speak, is that nuts are no more likely to cause you to get weight gain compared to any other food, plus they may have some health benefits. And that probably explains why nuts are actually a big part of a lot of the popular health diets, the Mediterranean diet, vegetarian diets, plant-based diets, the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, all recommend nuts. Now, my only concern with nuts, for those of you that say, all right, I need to add more nuts to my diet, is I do agree with Tim Ferriss a little bit about this, is that nuts can be sort of a domino food, meaning it's hard to just eat one. I know that was the slogan of the Lay's potato chips, but like I love almonds. That's my go-to food when I'm traveling and go through airports. But it's really hard to eat just a small amount. Very quickly, I've gone through the entire bag. I've even tried to, just put a small serving in a Ziploc bag and do that. It's hard for me to eat just a small number of nuts. So it's something to think about, but at least in this study in Obesity Reviews, doesn't seem to lead to weight gain. All right. I want to talk about a diet I didn't actually know much about. It's called the MIND diet, and it pertains to Alzheimer's disease. Now, I suspect most people watching this show have known somebody, maybe a family member, that's had Alzheimer's disease. Terrible, terrible condition. And it's the brain deteriorating, for lack of a better word, due to buildup of these abnormal proteins, these amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles. And these researchers at Rush University created what they called the MIND diet. It's a hybrid of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, wanting to see if that sort of protected the brain from those protein deposits. And what they found is that, yes, this was published in the just a week or two ago in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, that it did that people that followed that diet did not have cognitive problems later in life. It led to better cognitive function. So what is the MIND diet? And just ask yourself, as I'm sort of reading what the MIND diet is, if this is something you could do. To me, it doesn't sound that bad. All right, if you follow the MIND diet, you have to eat 3 servings of whole grains every day, a green leafy vegetable every day, and some other vegetable every day, and a glass of wine. Most people aren't going to complain about that. You have to snack most days with nuts. Again, there's the nuts thing. Have beans every other day. Poultry and berries at least twice a week. Fish at least once a week. But you do have to limit unhealthy foods. No butter, or less than 1.5 teaspoons of butter a day. Less than 1 serving a week of sweets, pastries, whole fat cheese, which would be bad for me, fried, and fast food. But all in all, that sounds like a relatively healthy diet, and with the grains giving you some carbs, that may not be so bad. Preventing Alzheimer's, or hopefully lowering your risk of Alzheimer's down the road, would certainly be a good thing. All right. Now, speaking of cheese, it's ridiculous how much I love cheese. And for somebody that's as healthy as I try to be, that is probably one of my big weaknesses. I love blue cheese on salads. I love blue cheese dressing. I love Gouda and cheddar and Munster, and I just love cheese. It's ridiculous. Like at Thanksgiving, we have the big feast later in the day, but we have these cheese platters all around the house throughout the day. By the time the dinner is served, I'm usually not all that hungry. I've eaten literally a plate of cheese over the course of the day. I have a problem. But there's a study. This is really interesting. It was published, what journal was this? Yeah, I don't know. I'll find it as I'm reading it. But it's really interesting. These researchers looked at dairy fats and cardiovascular disease, and they studied over 4,000 adults in their 60s in Sweden, which I didn't know. Basically, they consume more dairy than just about any other country in the world. So what they did is they took these 4,000 plus people, measured their blood for this particular fatty acid that tells you that, yes, you eat a certain amount of dairy, you eat a lot of dairy. And then they followed these people for 16 years to see who developed heart attacks, who developed strokes, who had other cardiovascular events, and who died. And what they found is the people with the highest levels of that fatty acid that indicates that you're a high level of dairy consumer, they had the lowest risk of cardiovascular disease. Now that goes against everything we've been taught for years and decades, that dairy is bad for us. Well, maybe not. Now, I will tell you that this is not cause and effect. There's some sort of association here, but what this doesn't prove is that if you eat more dairy, that it's going to lead to lower risks. There's just an association here. There may be variables that they didn't account for. We don't know. But it's at least interesting. So it'll be interesting to see if we see more studies along these lines in the future. All right, last one. So I have a lot of patients that tell me, I have a lot of friends that tell me that they drink wine at night, especially red wine, because it's healthy. It protects their heart. And that story I still say that's largely promoted by the wine industry, honestly. But I know tons of patients, tons of people that do that. Well, let's talk about that. There is a study that just came out in the journal Clinical Nutrition looking at 440,000 adults, and they concluded that, spoiler, no amount of alcohol is healthy. And here is sort of their take-home point, or one of the take-home points. Consuming even limited amounts of beer, cider, spirits was associated. Just a small amount, beer, cider, and spirits, I can't talk, was associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular events, increased risk of coronary heart disease, increased risk of cerebrovascular disease, strokes, increased risk of cancer, and increased risk of overall mortality. The only good benefit was from the group that drank red and white wine. They had a lower risk of coronary heart disease. Not all those others, just the coronary heart disease. But here's the kicker. They found that those same benefits, the drop in the risk of coronary heart disease, came in people who only drank non-alcoholic wine. So it wasn't the alcohol in the wine that it was doing it. What they found was it was the grapes themselves that seemed to provide protection for the heart. That it's the antioxidants in the grapes that are associated with the lower risk of plaques in your coronary arteries that lead to heart attacks. Other research has shown, and I'm going to tell you right away, I love grapes. Red seedless grapes, organic red seedless grapes are one of my favorite things ever. I had some earlier today, so obviously this is something I like. But it's been shown over and over that grapes have good health protective benefits for your heart. Decreases LDL, that's the bad cholesterol. Decrease oxidative stress, which is sort of an imbalance between antioxidant production and your body's production of free radicals, and decrease risk of inflammation, decreased blood pressure. So grapes, good. I'm not going to be a stickler on the, I know that the suggestions are no more than 2 alcoholic drinks per day for men and 1 for women. And if that's something you really like to do, but you eat healthy otherwise and good lifestyle, no smoking, you exercise, that's okay. But just know that there are some downsides to that alcohol, as that study shows, even limited amounts, with the cancer risks, the overall mortality risks, the stroke risks, all of that. They're just things you have to think about. So my personal opinion, again, this is not medical advice, but try to limit alcohol as much as possible. All right, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of that. Got a long way to go with my gallon of water today. Love to hear your thoughts. Remember, I would love if you want to subscribe to this as a podcast. You can't get here at 5 in the afternoon Eastern time, 2 p.m. Pacific time. Subscribe to the podcast, Better Than Ever Live, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to watch live and comment, definitely think about subscribing on YouTube, youtube.com/Dr. David Geier. LinkedIn, you can connect with me there and see the show live, or facebook.com/Dr. David Geier. Okay. Ashk Sharma, I may have said that wrong, is an amateur runner. Ran his first, let me see, put this on the screen here. There we go. Amateur runner, ran my first half marathon this week, want to take it to the next level. Recommend some key foods I should include in my diet. It's interesting, if you go back and listen to the show Tuesday, the last one I did, I talked about plant-based diets for athletic performance. I don't really believe that people need to be plant-based specifically, but if you are, there's certainly evidence that you can do fine with it. You just may need to supplement a few things. I've never been I guess, Ashk, I'm a little on the fence here, because there is sort of a transition going as far as nutrition goes and what people recommend for athletic performance. The Novak Djokovic's in tennis, and there's a number of cycling teams, and these ultra endurance athletes are starting to switch to ketogenic diets and modified ketogenic diets away from the old school thought of carb loading and things like that. I think that the carb loading is starting to fall out of favor a little bit, but there is still a lot of gray there. I would argue well-balanced diet, especially lots of green vegetables, supplement things that you don't get enough of. Maybe if you don't get enough vitamin D, if you don't get enough potassium, you don't get enough calcium, magnesium, substitute those. But good, well-balanced diet. And yeah, if you want to eat meat, I think proteins are good. I think you can do moderate protein. I don't think it has to be a high-protein diet. So that's what I have to say. Last thing I'm going to say real quick, because I've got to go, but I am open to the suggestion. I'm getting a lot of suggestions that 5 o'clock does not work for a lot of people because they're driving home. And I am certainly sensitive to that. I don't know that, there's only some certain times of my day that I can consistently be here. 5 on Tuesdays and Thursdays is probably the best. But I am considering at least noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time, which would allow people to watch at work. works for me because I can do it in my lunch break between clinic sessions or on my media day. I can do it after my media videos and segments. So it may be noon. So I'm still looking, if you have thoughts on that, leave those in the comments or, contact me through my website. Or if there's things you'd like me to discuss, ideas, if you have articles that you see that you'd like me to talk about, definitely send those my way. Thank you so much for watching. We've got some really good stuff next week. I know we've done death by hot dog before. Next week we've got death by potato. That's right. We've got a really surprising person that might be the most annoying person in your life. It's amazing how many people said this one person. A lot of good stuff next week. So I look forward to seeing you in early October. Again, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, on live, or wherever you get your podcast. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next Tuesday. Take care.